shaping, urban design, urban planning is shaping the space in which we live. That's its purpose. So how do we want to live? Therefore, how should we shape the space? How do we design neighbourhoods, our streets, our infrastructure, our transport systems, our buildings to be more sustainable? Churchill said, we shape our buildings and afterwards our buildings shape us. There's this relationship between our built environment and our behaviour. So you can design a city that makes it really hard to cycle, Auckland, or really easy to cycle, Copenhagen. Is cycling good? I'm going to argue about that in a moment and give you some examples. You can create public realm or not. You can create superb public buildings or not. You can privatise space or make space more public. You can grow food close to your cities and in your cities or not. You can make them hot or cooler through greening your cities. You can generate energy renewably or not. These are choices that city strategists, mayors, development planners, and so on, transport planners, make every day. And that we need to make conscious choices about these things against this backdrop of sustainability and the challenge that we make. So the down is the environmental problems that we face, and many of the social problems that go with them. The upside is that good urbanism increasingly is seen to be very good for the environment. And this is Copenhagen, and this is life on the street in Copenhagen. This is an example of a city that 40 years ago, if you go there now, you'd imagine it was always that wonderful, actually. And it wasn't. So 40 years ago, it was very car dependent. There was lots of smog, it was very dirty, there wasn't the kind of quality of public realm, streets that weren't that well resolved. You go there now, there are 5,000 cafe seats on the street, beautiful public realm, wide pavements, absolutely astonishing transformation of the city. It's also become one of the world's most livable cities. It's one of the fastest growing in the world. It's growing so quickly that the next to parts of Sweden, Malmö, to enable it to grow, connecting it with a bridge. It's just a superb example of a city that's moving in the right direction. Could you find a more appropriate city to have the Copenhagen Summit on climate change later this year? Probably not. Maybe in 4 years' time it should come to Auckland. No urban area will now prosper unless it attracts people who can choose to live wherever they like. So the kind of people that we want to attract to create wealth in our cities, entrepreneurs, people starting and running business, creative people, they're very footloose in the global economy. They can move to any of those cities I mentioned before. The kinds of cities increasingly that they're moving to are ones that are livable, green, sustainable, have great public realm, and so on. So there's a terrific fit between successful cities and greener cities, more and more when you look in the indexes on these things. One of the things that we have to address, regeneration and the social aspects, is to create Bruce Katz. Bruce is the president of the Brookings Institution, and this is based on 40 years of rigorous research into regeneration in the United States. He said there are two outstanding things that need to be achieved. One is to create mixed income neighbourhoods, which become neighbourhoods of choice, so to attract higher income households into some of your poorer neighbourhoods. In order to do that, you need to transform the basic underlying conditions in those neighbourhoods, which is an incredibly regenerative thing to do. And the second thing is the acceptance of economic integration and connecting neighbourhoods to the city economy and cultural offer. Public realm, absolutely key. We privatised space over the last 50 years. You live in your private house, you fence your private garden, you don't have a relationship with the street, you get in your car in the morning, more private space, not on the bus or the tram, drive to a business park into another private space, at the end of the day go back and caricaturing to make my points. That's the American model which we're importing to cities and places all over the world. Public realm is where society lives, it's where people meet and exchange. It's a kind of democratic reality, face-to-face contact on our streets and our parks. And think of Central Park. What an incredible bold gesture that was when Olmsted created it. And actually, just if you're interested in land values, how much value it added to land around the park in Manhattan, which has helped make it the great old city it is today. Whole life values. When we're thinking about building, could we build at Edinburgh Newtown today, for those of you that know it? You know, here's an experiment, in fact, in urban planning and urban design about 180, 200 years old. And the thing about these buildings, beautiful place, the thing about these buildings, here they are 200 years later, in absolutely fine fettle. You can refurbish them, you can knock them about, their foundations and their structure were built so well, they were built for the future. You can refurbish them, you can use the ground floor as a bank, a chemist, a cafe, you can have a lawyer's office above that, and then 2 apartments. The whole thing could be a very grand office, the whole thing could be a very grand townhouse. That's an essentially adaptable building that will stand the test of the time, and stand the test of time and come to be loved by the people who live in it and live around it. Do we build like that anymore? In Britain, with public expenditure on buildings, we build for 60-year life, which is it's assumed that the building will be knocked down at the end of 60 years. It's a fundamentally unsustainable way of procuring public buildings. Amsterdam, these are 350 years old, these buildings here. And they've adapted to different ways of living. So nothing really changes in the way we live. But if you lived in Amsterdam, you could always walk around in the centre. It's superbly well connected. Again, very beautiful fine grain in terms of small plots that makes the street interesting and fascinating to move around. So we can learn from these old cities. As Stuart Brown said, the building may have durable construction and resilient design, which can forgive the insults and hard swerves of usage. So he said that he studied buildings in America over 100 years old, and he said that on average over their life, they changed use 8 times. So once every 12 years, they change use fundamentally. And those good buildings have the resilience and the adaptability to adapt to those changes. And age plus adaptivity makes a building come to be loved. Hindsight is better than foresight, which is why vernacular buildings often work better than innovative new ones like, well, not new anymore, but geodesic domes, say. We forget to look at what we've learned in the way we design cities and design buildings, for their inherent resilience and qualities that enable them to endure. And we need to allow for adaptation in our cities. We need to build in such a way that we can add to and change over time. And here's a project that we're working on. This is the London won the Olympics on 2 premises, I think, arguably. One was it would regenerate the East End of London, and secondly, it would be the most sustainable Olympics. Now, every Olympics for the last 4 has said they're going to be the greenest and most sustainable, and have often fallen short. And this one is essentially retrofitting a whole part of a city. It will impact directly on over 1 million people across 5 boroughs, with a major park at the middle of it. So the refurbishment in a sustainable way of a whole piece of city. So there you've got, during the Olympics, you create this special park which can accommodate 200,000 visitors a day. Goodness knows how many athletes and media covering this. But the legacy that comes afterwards, and that's the emerging plan for a very intense piece of sustainable city. I'll come back to that a little bit later on. So, how do you ensure that that's built to last? How do you ensure that you can walk and cycle around, you can grow food, you can generate your energy renewably, and so on? One of the things that we did was that we felt that it was too monolithic. We felt that the scale of it was overwhelming. Actually, it needed to be divided up into 60 legacy neighbourhoods, as we call them, that Neil on the front here and I have been working on, to connect them to existing built fabric and existing communities and work closely with those communities on defining what this new development and this new way of living and working might be. And that's the great opportunity for this Olympics, is to connect the Olympic brand with addressing regeneration and poverty in a global city, connect that to sustainable ways of living, and in turn sustainable ways of designing and redesigning place. What a great story that can be. And